Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that you enjoy this content to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Samantha on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Mississippi. Like I told her before we started recording, she might be the first guest I've had on from Mississippi. After like 650 of these, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that she might be the first one. And being that she said that like she grew up pretty close to where Elvis is from, everyone knows I'm the huge Elvis fanboy, so that's exciting enough for me. But yeah, she's on here to share her story in bodybuilding, and yeah, just give us her backstory and what got her inspired into this, and yeah, just talk all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest, Samantha. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm not even gonna ask what the weather's like because I can just see it looks sunny, at least on your end, so it's already making me a little anxious and angry right now. So,
Be super angry because it's like just a touch of heaven right here. 75, sunshiny, beautiful. It's just perfect.
we're admitting and she's already breaking everyone. This is gonna be a long podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's great. But before I do get depressed and like start getting a little teary eyed on here, why don't you just first off to get us started, tell us your backstory and what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now.
I've been an athlete pretty much my whole adult life, but as far as bodybuilding itself, my brother and I, we love to do two things together. We love to ride motorcycles and lift weights. And so we did that quite often. And he always just encouraged me. He said, hey, you should go bodybuild, you should go compete, blah, 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 blah. And so we were working out, and I was like, you know what? This was 2015. I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to sign up. So I did. I got me a trainer, signed up, all the bit. And 10 days later, he got killed in motorcycle accident. So I reached out to my trainer. I was like, man, I cannot mentally, emotionally go through with this and compete right now. And so I took some time off, and like December of 2019, I was like, you know what? Something just said to me like, okay, it's time. So I reached out to a lady at my gym. Her name is Wanda Moore, and she used to compete back in the day. And I was like, you know what? I know you used to compete. Can you help me out? And so she got me in touch with her husband, Lance Moore, and we just started training. And I did my first competition August 2020, and that was bikini. And if you remember 2020, it was like awful. And I'm a full time nurse, and we have call as well. So literally working 20 hours, some days, 6 days, 7 days a week. It was nuts back then. COVID was like full blown. Everybody was shut down except for us essential workers, and I did a lot of prepping in my car. I know that sounds crazy. I had 69 miles one way to work. So I'm like lifting weights on the way to work. And then, like, because we were on call also, I'm an acute dialysis nurse. So we had call. But I did bikini that year. And
Okay, you're going to need to dig into this a little bit deeper because how the hell during COVID, with everything going on, how did you even do that? Like you said, working sometimes 20 hours and that being your first prep, how did you do that? Because that might be one of the most amazing things. Even driving 69 miles just to your job is one of the more impressive things. But how did you do all that?
it was just sheer perseverance. Like I was determined. And in my heart, I was like, I knew it was time. I was prompted. And number two, like, I'm doing this in honor of my brother. Like, this is something that he had always pushed me to do. And so I was like, so 100% committed. It didn't matter. And I have 4 children. I had 2 children at the home at that time. And my youngest daughter, Briley, I would come home, and, they weren't going to school or anything. So it'd be 1 o'clock in the morning, and she'd be like, okay, you got to do your nighttime routine. So we'd call it nighttime routine. And it was like abs, you know, and calisthenics, stretching stuff. And so, she would be there awake, waiting on me, like, okay, even if I was tired or didn't feel like it that night, she was in my face, like, okay, let's do this. And she's 14 now. I can't remember how old she was, so we all do the math. I don't know. So it was just day by day, just knowing this is what I have to do and knocking it out, regardless of if I was at work, 16 hours, 20 hours, 12 hours. It didn't matter. I had something to do, and I was 100% committed.
How'd you deal with stress with all that?
Right. It was nuts, and it was horrible as a nurse. And my fellow nurses can definitely testify to this, that it was just an awful experience as far as like seeing the people And we're us being the cutes, our acuity, like the people were super sick where we were, and they were just like to watch them go through that, and then they were alone as well. Absolutely heartbreaking. And then we were stressed from that and just exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically from all of that. But you know, hats off to of all those people because we worked hard, very hard.
So, I mean, yeah, that is just absolutely incredible. I don't understand how you're able to do that, and I always think that there's a little bit of psychopathy in some of these guests, and you definitely have a little bit in a good way, I will say. But like, yeah, because so many people, like we were talking about before we started recording, like this is so much more of a mental, and there's so many more things that go into the sport than are really talked about, and just that mental strength that you have to do this. I mean, you prove already your first time out that you have it, but it's always just been the most jaw dropping thing to me about this lifestyle is just how much goes into this mentally and how much you have to deal with on that. What has that been like for you this entire journey? Just focusing on that mental side and realizing that like it is so much more impactful than any of the physical sides that this sport will have.
To me, it fits me so well. I think sometimes where like God designs us in certain ways, right? And this is your gift and this is what you do. But for me, and the way I was raised as well, like I do my best under high stress levels. Like if the crap's hitting the fan, I am my absolute best every time. And so to be pushed like that, I'm just dead set. Like I'm golden. Um, I've done all types of sports. I was myself and another female were the first female fighters for the Air Force. So like traditional boxers, and so that was great. That was fun. Um, and within that, I kind of lost my fire, and you have to have that to be a good fighter. Like you just have to. An athlete in general. So if you lose your fire in that sport, then I knew it was time to give it up. Triathlons, century rides, cycling. It's just this sport is very unique in the sense of like with my other sports, you could cheat or you could like eat what you wanted to 3 months out or 2 months out and it not be a big deal. Here, literally, every single decision you make throughout every single day, like you've got to make. This is what I teach my kids. Like you make great choices. If you want to be a champion, you make great choices. There's good choices and there's bad choices, and that's easy to make a decision what you're going to do. Right? If you're going to make a decision between a good choice and a great choice, that's what's going to set you aside. That's what's going to say this person's a leader, this person's a champion. They're going to go somewhere. So making those great choices without fail every single day is what you have to do, and I love that. I dig that.
Have you ever tried any boxing workouts now that you're all super big and muscular now and seeing like how much different it was than when you were in the Air Force?
Well, we have like this kid like kickboxing class at our gym, our local gym, Edge Fitness, and I did it a couple times, but just my shoulder and just like you said, like how big I am, I don't move as quick as I wanted to, and then I get pissed off at myself and be like, and then I want to hit hard, and then I mess up my wrist or something stupid. I'm like, you know what? Let me just simmer. Let me take a whole breath and do something else. So it's great conditioning, though. I'm telling you, it was great endurance training, without a doubt.
So I feel bad that I did cut you off halfway through your backstory. We're up to 2020. So what happened previous to then? Because I'm sorry, I was just so flabbergasted when you're talking about how you were able to do that prep that I was like, okay, we need to stop right here and just talk about. So what happened during 2020 and what's been happening since then?
So 2020, I did a bikini competition, and that really doesn't fit my style. Just my
Looking at you now, it's you don't really have the bikini build. If I'm being completely
right
honest.
look. I'm 5'9", 5'9" and a half, and like stepping on stage as like 138 pounds, I was brawling, for my liking. And then, now I'm like sitting right at like 165 and thick. So, but, it's some adjusting because, we all have our issues, growing up, I was always Sasquatch or gigantic, you know what I mean? Because I'm just a big person. And so to just 100% own me and just love myself as how I'm built and me aspiring and driving toward what I want. And this is, I love figure. And this is like more of my fit. But bikini, I did it. I rocked it out my best. And I'll have to tell you a cool story about that. My first competition. Um, Most of us, it's well outside our comfort zone. If you look at, and I'm sure you've noticed a trend with your interviews, like we're not really huge outgoing people, like we're introverts, some, for the most part. So going out on stage that first time, I was like, oh, I just felt just like, ugh. So I step out on stage, and let me tell you, I hit that first pose, and there was a song that my sister-in-law played for me at my brother's funeral, and it started playing. When I tell you, like emotionally, like I had to gather myself, I like almost lost it. And so I
You
just
don't
took,
want that makeup running too on stage. Good God.
oh, I know, right? We paid good money for that, right? So big deep breath, and I was like, you know what? This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I just held my head high and rocked it out in the best way I could. I took 2021 off because we had some family issues, some trauma going on in our lives. So I took that whole year off. Last year was my first figure season, and I loved every moment of that. Like I placed second in one show and placed first and overall winner in the second, and so that just pushed me. And it wasn't so that was in August, the total body championship for that, and then like it hit me like November. I was like, I can do this for a living. I'm going to do this.
I mean, speaking of God's gift, we got to talk about genetics because as much as I hate to bring it up, everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And then everyone always has that one body part that they just have to drag behind. And what was one body part that really took off for you? And what's been one body part that you've just had to drag behind?
Okay, so my gift is my shoulders for sure. Thanks, Dad. So, and my ass and legs are like so behind, like behind. Literally. So they just like are not where I want them to be. I worked so hard. Oh my gosh, and just never have gotten to where I want to be. And we're anal with ourselves. Like we just micromanage ourselves. We're just like body dysmorphia stuff. Like we're like, eh. But yeah, so I'm still working very diligently to try to get that in check. So yeah.
How are you trying to work on that? Because body dysmorphia is the one thing that I've found to be both hilarious just because like you're one of the most in shape people on the planet right now at the look that you're at right now, and the fact that like people don't understand that as you get in more and more shape, a lot of times that body dysmorphia gets amplified even more. But how do you deal with that? Because the average person who would look at you would not assume that you would have body dysmorphia.
Um, I'm still struggling, to be honest. If you, that's just me being very transparent. Because you know, in between shows, there's like this sweet spot. So like you're training and you get to like stage ready, and then there's like that. For me, it's like that second week. Oh man, I'm like, yeah, I look amazing. I feel amazing, and then it's just like whatever happens overnight between the second week and the beginning of the third, you're like, oh my god, I'm fat. Like you feel like just like, and so I still struggle with that for sure. And then like right now, I'm 3 weeks and 3 days out from show, and I'm trying to get. And I was telling my trainer yesterday, I was like, you know what, Lance, like I'm gonna have to lean out quick. Like this, he goes, trust the process, and he's always right. He's always been right. Like you know what to do. Like just take a breath. Just trust the process. Do what you know to do. And I know it's gonna happen, but it's just like that uncertainty of being like, you know what, this is my game time. Like I want to be my best, and we're like that, and I think that's what makes bodybuilding just amazing to me because we're always our personalities, and I've met many, and we all kind of we have this certain personality. There's a few wild cards out there, but we still want to be our best on stage, and there's certain things that we're willing to do to make sure. You know what? This great choice is way better than me feeling guilty, and this is what I tell my colleagues or my friends at the gym. Like I cannot live with shoulda, coulda, woulda. Like they say, oh, well, you deserve a day. No, what I deserve is to be pro. What I deserve is to live this life I want. And so making those choices, even though you feel like ass. So you can't. There's a certain point where you don't listen to your body. Like you know what your body's telling you, and there's certain times you got to switch it off. And just knowing, hey, I still got to get my hour and a half of cardio in. I still got to get my lift in, and just persevering through your body feeling just like trash, and just doing what you know to do. I don't live with shoulda, coulda, woulda very well because if I went up on stage and I got second when I was supposed to get first to get my pro card, baby, I would be so pissed off at myself because I would have been thinking, you know what? If I would have done that nighttime routine when I felt like ass that night after working a 19-hour shift or 16 hours, because I'm still a acute dialysis nurse. It's like this past weekend, not getting home until 2 o'clock. I worked. Went into work at 6:30 in the morning on a Friday. I get home at 2 a.m. on Saturday. I'm still at the gym at 10 a.m. killing my cardio, doing my lifting because this is what I'm committed to. You know what I mean? And then you go to work Sunday. You don't get home until midnight. You still got to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday. Doesn't matter. You do what you need to do to make your life happen the way you want.
I've never said this before on the podcast, but ew. Just thinking about that schedule. No,
So,
I was just like ew. Like, that just sounds gross.
yes, and that's the thing. Like with us, with in my nursing, we don't have relief. With like the floor nurses or whatever, they have relief. They have 7A, 7P, blah blah blah. We don't. We're there until the job's done. Somebody come to ER and need a treatment. Guess what? We're the one. And at my particular facility, we're so small. I'm the only body there. I'm the only like dialysis staff there. So it's like a pro and a con all at the same time. I absolutely love it. I really do. But some days get long like that, and that's just all part of it. But there's some days though. Don't think it's all bad because there's some days I get to leave in 6 hours or 7 hours. So it all in the end.
But being that bodybuilding is like such a regimented life where almost all of your time has to be accounted for, and with your current job schedule that you have, it's not like that. How do you deal with that? Because that would seem to drive 99% of the guests that I've talked to just absolutely crazy.
Yes. And the thing is, just being committed to get up super early, get my cardio in early, and then you know what? When I finish my job, I know I still got to lift regardless. But getting that cardio out in the beginning, right before I go to work, that's my game changer. Because at first, when I wasn't doing that, it did drive me nuts. But knowing I have that already accounted for, that's what helps me stay level headed and be like, okay, I'm good.
Well, and we got to talk about posing because that's the number one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years is the hardest thing for so many of the competitors. It's out of the top three of just the working out, the nutrition, and the cardio. I mean, and the posing by far for a lot of them is the hardest. But what has your experience with posing been like?
Yes, it definitely to me like I didn't realize the impact when I first started competing, but to know, especially at the national level, like every little like angle or whatever, it definitely matters. And that's what's going to set us aside. And I'm still fine tuning, especially my back pose. Like, I don't know why that's difficult for me. So, and just making sure you're being confident, you're looking, just smiling and like you're having fun, which I'm pretty good at. Like I really like being on stage. I have fun, so that comes natural for me because I am having fun. But there is a certain point where you're nervous and kind of jittery a little bit sometimes. But just making sure you look elegant and beautiful, yet bold and strong, and it's like this whole package, because they're definitely looking at you at all times, head to toe, from the moment you step out, whether you're someone else is on stage or not. Like they're judging you at all times, and just keeping that in mind. But I'm still working on my back pose, still working on my poses, transitions, making sure they're beautiful and fine tuned, and I think that's should continue throughout your career because you always want to be, You always want to be your best, and your body's always evolving. And there's going to be a certain time where this angle looks better. Well, you know what? I grew some mass on my ass. Yay! And let's make sure we show that off a little bit. So
Well, whenever I talk to a figure competitor, I always got to talk about the front lat spread because that's the one pose that I talk to people where it's the hardest thing for so many people just to get that. Was that something that you struggled with at all? Because I've talked to people that it takes years for them to be able to even do that pose.
last season I was having a little bit of difficulty because it was my first season as figure and things like that. This season I fine tuned it, and and I feel very confident with it now. But again, like it's just repetition, like making sure you're continuing to work on it, and do it every single day. Because the more you do it, if you can do it in your sleep, guess what? You can do it when you're nervous as hell. So and not being able to think.
And you mentioned before that like the first time you went on stage, it wasn't really that comfortable for you, but you mentioned now that it's like super comfortable and you really enjoy doing it. At what point do you think it really became enjoyable for you?
I think the big game changer was going from bikini because it's a different presentation, have you, to figure, which is a little bit more structured, and it fit my like personality better. So that was a huge step to make me feel more comfortable. And just the more you do it, and I freaking love this stuff. Like I have such a huge passion for this, and you know, everything, it sounds crazy, but literally, I wake up in the morning and be like, how is this going to set me up for success to get where I need to be?
Well, I don't want you to hate me because I literally work 2 blocks away from where I live. So, I driving 69 miles, that just to me is just that's like how long that's when I went to college, that's how far away it was from my home basically. So I can't more
Yeah.
power to you for that because again that just adds on to everything that you've had to do in this lifestyle. But I mean, let's be completely honest too, you're not the average looking 5'9" woman, especially as you get closer to a show. I always like to compare it to be like being a main celebrity where you're just going to draw people's attention because it's human nature when they see something that's not the normal to just be fascinated by it. What has that been like, and has it been easier for you to accept that as your journey in the sport has gone on and on, or is it still one of those things where you're like, okay, this is still kind of weird?
I'm getting more used to it, but the first time like someone stopped me in the street and been like, "Hey, can I take my picture with you?" or something like that, I was like, "Wait, what? Like, who am I? Like, oh, I mean, so I'm still getting used to that, but you know, it's it still feels a little weird because to me, like, I don't see myself as anything as far as like, you know, I don't know. It's hard to take in, that people would like to take their picture with me because again, like I don't see myself as anything spectacular or I don't know.
I know it is hard for. I mean, when I was in my best shape during college too, I dealt with that a lot too. Mostly, it was just drunk girls at the bar trying to feel your arms. But then that's it was the college so I'd pump it up for them a little bit. The college Ryan Johnson's a little bit different than the one now. But yeah, I've just found that fascinating, just how people react differently, just to the way that a lot of people look. But as you are getting closer and closer to your show, at what point on average do you presume in your prep before you start just losing your mind prep brain wise? Because being that you work an important job, like at what point do you maybe say to yourself like, hey, I got to find ways to try to make sure that I'm not like doing the wrong thing and giving someone else some wrong injection or something like that, being a nurse? Like at what point does that really start to come into play?
Um, that last week, that that peak week, it's tough, and I'll tell you specifically, like the Wednesday before, like if it's a Saturday show, that Wednesday before, that sucks. That day sucks. So to to be clear minded and like it takes a lot of energy just to focus and be like, I have to slow things down. And this is what I talked to one of my bosses about. I was like, you know what? I just have to really, I'm super fast and good at what I do anyway. Um, but not to be boastful, but like, it is what it is. So, like, I tell him, I was like, you know what? I'm close to prep or whatever. Things are going to slow down, which he expects because he tells me to slow down anyway. But, just slowing things down, being very thoughtful and very mindful of everything that you're doing, because it is important because my job is it could be very deadly like if you make a wrong decision, and that you have to be smart. um, so yeah, just to slow things down and be very purposeful with everything and check your boxes, like, you know this is what I'm doing, slow things down. And that's how I deal with it. I'm sure different people do different things. But that's what I have found that works best for me.
Do you ever look at like old photos of yourself, obviously before you started competing, and just wonder like how I did that? Because I've always just found through talking to all these guests just how amazing the human body is. But if I really got like in bodybuilding shape, like about to step on stage, like it would blow my mind how I was able to do that. Do you ever fall back on that and just sort of not give yourself a pat on the back, but just realize like what you've been able to achieve, even without getting, even if you could win the Olympia? I mean, you still have achieved something great.
Right. Yes. So, and it's crazy that you mentioned that because this week has been very, I don't know, I've just been able to just sit back and just be like, what? Because someone told me it was like last Thursday, and today's Tuesday, right? So last Thursday, they were like, you know what?
Wednesday, not Tuesday.
I do what now?
You said
No, but
Tuesday, it's Wednesday. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want to have you thinking like the rest of the time, like, oh, I got plans for Thursday. No, I didn't want it to be like that Office episode where they convinced Dwight that it was the wrong day. I couldn't not now again. If you were not on prep, I might let it slide. But being the fact that you're on prep, I felt sorry, so I was like, okay, I gotta let her know that it's Wednesday.
yeah, so it is Wednesday. Okay, so last week they were like, I showed a picture, just like one of my modeling pictures from March, and they were like, "This is March." And I was like, "Why'd you mess your face up?" They're like, you just bigger. Like you're so much bigger than you were then. And I was like, I've been working my ass off. Like, yeah. But yeah, and so I just look back through my photos and like, holy smokes, this season I've grown a lot. And then to compare to last season, holy smokes. And then, like 2019, and that was I did a 500 miles in 5 days, and on a bike in the mountains of Thailand in 2017, and I was looking through those photos, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" Like I just look definitely not same for sure, but just to see how my body has evolved, it just blows my mind, and it's just being able to be connected with the right people and being driven as I am is just it's changed my whole life in such good powerful ways. Like I love this stuff again. So
Well, first of all, people complaining about not being able to lose weight, just do 500 miles in 5 days in Thailand, and I can guarantee you drop those pounds. I've been fascinated by those, just based on how much weight people lose, because I've known people that like do those hikes through days and stuff like that, and they lose like 20 to 30 pounds in like a week, and it's just I've always been fascinated by that stuff.
we were averaging 10,000 calories burned a day. Well, that was my first time in Thailand, and I was like, couldn't eat enough calories, yo. And so I'm living off gummy bears and Coca Cola, and like
The other one would have been even more hilarious. Just a coked up biker. Are you kidding?
crystal clear. Okay. Um,
You'd be losing even more calories then. Like,
no, but I didn't really lose bad weight, but I definitely wanted the energy because not that it was a competition at all because it wasn't, but just to have the energy to not feel like crap and be able to push through the mountains, man, it was intense, and it was a beautiful experience. Though I would go to sleep at night thinking, God, it could be beautiful, more beautiful, and you wake up the next day and you're like cycling over the mountain. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's even more beautiful. So it was a beautiful experience. I'm so thankful for that.
it's a completely different mindset. If I had to fall asleep knowing that I had to bike 100 miles the next day, I would not be thinking about how beautiful this stuff is. That's just me. But again, that's the mindset that you have to have if you want to do
Yeah,
stuff like that.
man, I was like, here we go, let's do it. Good stuff.
No, again, that is what separates the general public like me just from the competitors that are able to do this, that you have to be able to have that mentality. But being that you are 5'9" and on the taller side, especially for bodybuilding competitions, I went to my first show like a couple of years ago, and I was being 6'3". I was just shocked at how I could bounce most guests like a basketball if I wanted to, just because most of them are on the shorter side. What is that like, especially doing figure where your height gets even more augmented just by the poses that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What's the question?
What's that experience been like for you, just being taller than a lot of the average people on there, especially like in figure, because doing with the poses that you do, your height and with the high heels that you wear, your height just gets so much more augmented. And I've seen some stage photos from you, and yeah, you are towering over a few other competitors.
Yes, yes. So, well, for me in general, like I own my height. Like I've always loved it, and I've always actually wished I was a little height, like taller. So to be side by side by those guys, it doesn't bother me or anything like that. But as far as like to me, like the way our body is made, it just looks different on me than it would be that someone shorter. So I just I know that at the regional level and the local level, I was pretty much myself and another girl from our gym, Kathy. She's about my height, and we were always the tallest ones, you know. And then I went to my first national show in South Carolina this year, and when I tell you, I was humbled. Like I was like, "Holy smokes, it's a different world. These girls are huge." And we were classed on height there, and those girls, like I was one of the smallest ones. I felt like small fry, but I loved it because it gave me so much drive to be better. Like I was like, you know what? Yes, and I dug it just to see the difference in a local, a regional, and a national level. So to be on stage with the taller girls, I really loved it, and I love to watch them because we move different. And it's just I don't know. I enjoy you know
I am so glad to hear that they did it by height at the show because that has always been my biggest pet peeve. Like if you're standing next to someone who's 5 feet tall, it's really hard to judge physiques when you're just dealing with that vast a difference of height. I've always had that opinion, and I'm glad that they at least did that by height because I haven't heard that happen too often. And I've been watching a few shows where like, yeah, the guest might be 6 feet tall and they're standing next to someone who's 4'11". It's like, I'm sorry, but you can't judge that really.
yeah.
So
So they'll do open. So we'll have like based off height, and the particular show that I'm going now will be based off height and age, which is going to be great. I've been competing against 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds, so I'm hopeful for this other show, and we'll see. I'm excited.
well, now we got to ask about shoulders because that's the number one body part that guests say doesn't grow for them and really sucks for them. And obviously, like you said, your shoulders are the one thing that really takes off. I would get killed if I didn't ask you what you do for shoulders because all these guests are just clamoring for any secrets they can get. So, what do you do for shoulders? Because, yeah, obviously it's working.
Well, I know my trainer. He pushes hardcore for me. So just lateral raises, and they're very, of course, heavy AF, heavy as you can. And then, I mean, we kill it. I'm telling you, at least twice a week. Um, and then we have this. Even it's a shoulder press, but we actually do it backwards. So it not only is it hitting our shoulders, it's hitting my lats too at the same time because we're moving forward. And I don't see many like just looking at the gyms around. I've not seen a shoulder press machine quite like we have, so it's kind of unique. And I think that's my game changer, to be honest, because just the way we're able to turn around, and it's kind of like a hack squat, and you know how you can reverse that and do it the other way. So we kind of do that same thing.
Do you have video of it that you could send me, and then I'll have that clip playing on the side because I
Uh-huh.
don't really understand what you're saying, and I'd love to see what that is because I've never heard this before. This is good info.
Yeah. So I have a couple reels. I'll send it to you. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're learning new things, everyone, and I love the fact that you said train more than once a week because that's one thing that people. That's the number one
Oh,
thing I tell them. A lot of times they're like, "Oh yeah, I only just train them like once a week," and I was like, "Well, if they're really not the growing part for you, you're gonna have to train them more than once a week." Which is, and the thing that I always love is that I always tell people when they say like, "Oh, I'm gonna go train shoulders." Oh, what part? They just go, "Oh, the shoulder part," and it's like there's more than one part of your shoulder. You gotta, and there's different exercises for them, and that's why I just gotta kind of set them aside, and tell that. But we got to talk about also just the mindset that you need to have post show. When we talked a little bit about body dysmorphia, but post show is a whole entirely different beast. What has your experience been like with post show? Because so many people do not understand that look that you can put on stage is not maintainable. And first of all, it shouldn't be maintainable. It's not health. It's not a healthy look. But has it gotten easier for you to accept that fact, or is it still just as much of a struggle as it was when you first dealt with it?
it's definitely getting easier because you know what to expect almost. But after my first show, I'm telling you, I was like, I'm not doing this shit no more. Like, for real. Like, I'm like, no, because, and
Well, after that prep, if you were saying, yeah, let's do another one, I would call you, I would say you need to be locked up.
yeah. straight go. Yeah, so each time it is getting easier because I do know what to expect, and I know how and I laugh with my friends about because we all go out afterwards and we're gonna eat crap that we've been craving or whatever, and to do that smart way where you don't jack yourself up for
I'm
days.
sorry, I just heard your dog snore a little or sneeze a little bit. Again, stealing the show. I apologize to you in advance. Like it's gonna be. I might just have to do a thumbnail of him then instead of. That's
I'll send
awesome.
you a bill of him.
I've been trying to hold my just laughter and my smiles for a little bit because there was another time too where he was just kind of like this and he just kind of like stood up and stared at the camera for a little bit and then he just like went down again. Yeah, he's been a hoot and a holler.
Best, for sure, for sure.
Again,
But
oh,
that's, and then to know how to eat your trash without making yourself sick for days. Like I'm fine tuning that too. You know what I mean? Like eat your meal, don't be crazy. And then I have another extreme. Like you either just a little bit do it. Like okay, I'm gonna eat half of this fried chicken sandwich that I wanted or whatever, or you just go all out. Like just mess it up, and then you're sick, and you get sick, and then it's a wrap. Like you're like, okay, I can do this stuff again. But there's it's corn what personality shows up that moment. Like, okay, I'm gonna wow it tonight. Or you know what, I'm gonna keep myself level headed. Like I need to be smart. So I think we all.
but I mean, there's so many things about the sport of bodybuilding that people don't really think about. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Samantha, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
I would say that the females get paid out just as much as the males. That's what first thing that pops in my head, for sure. Because you look at what Sid Gillum won versus, I mean, come on.
I would say just get paid more in general too, and obviously make it equal as well. But just like even the men aren't making, I've always said that like if you're a pro, you should have like a stipend that like helps you. So like maybe you don't have to have a job. Like I'm not saying it's not like maybe like $20,000-$30,000 a year, something like just something small that like helps with the expenses because people don't understand how much money goes into this sport. That like unless you're winning the Olympia, you're not making a profit.
Well, yeah, yeah. Or have a bunch of sponsorships and like that. Like it's difficult to maintain, yes.
Yeah. We could talk about that for like 10 hours. Trust me. I mean, that's one of those things where, I mean, I have seen it get slightly better and better, but there's still such a long way that needs to go on that effort. And, hopefully it does change soon and, we'll see, but just
And
get,
also, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. This is your podcast.
So I'd also say I would um, so at the local level and the regional level and the national level to have the same standards. So for me, and I told my coach this past weekend, I was like, I almost quit at the beginning of the season because I'm at a local show. They told me I'm too big, you know, and then I look at all the figure girls, the top figure girls. I look not exactly like them, of course. I'm not as big as them, but that's my goal. How am I going to be a successful athlete in this bodybuilding if I can't get to that level because they say I'm too big, but yet I'm really not big enough to compete with those guys. So I think there needs to be a little bit more, organization as far as okay, this is what we want across the board as the standard. Yes, I know you're not going to step on Olympia stage, yet this is what's required to be an athlete for figure. You know what I mean? Like local, regional, national, professional. So I would like to see a more consistency across the board there.
Which I just find that so fascinating. Just alone the changes that have been made for what they want on stage in the 5 years that I've been doing this podcast. Because 5 years ago you would be a physique competitor, and now you're like on now like even you're saying like some of the guests that you compete against like you're not even close. They're huge, and I just find that to be so fascinating. Just how those divisions have changed in the last 5 years. It's never ending change and evolution.
Yes, and I just yes, yes, and a great age, by the way. Like not inappropriate.
Yeah.
and then they are based, and I appreciate the opportunity just to be able to compete with them.
Well, and we never talked about it, but I need to talk about it now because I totally forgot about it, even asking about it. But that nutrition, I mean, it's the most important thing in this lifestyle. I don't care what anyone says, other than sleep, but that's just a good. Well, I just got to ask then, how do you even get any sleep with the schedule that you have? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, me and sleep, we don't have a good relationship. And there's times where I sleep maybe 2 or 3 hours a night, which is horrible, but it is what it is. Um, yeah, that's a toughie for me because I'm not a good sleeper. And then as the closer to prep you get, heck, you're hungry and you can't sleep, you know. And I'm already having issues with sleep anyway, so that's a toughie. And as far as nutrition, especially on the go and at my job, um, tuna. I'm telling you, like I live off the packets of tuna. Like, oh, mom, pick, here, I'll put the tuna, eat the tuna, have my little egg whites, and that's essentially what I live off of. When I'm working, when I'm out and about.
I had a bad experience with tuna as a kid, and so now every time I hear the word tuna, a little bit of me just gag reflex a little bit, just because.
I saw that.
Oh God, that was just dead. Yeah, I mean, chicken of the sea. That's what one of my friends tried to convince me like 3 years ago to try it, and it did not end well. Even after I was like, as a kid, it's not going to end well. So more power to you that you're able to do that though, because again, that's something that if you had to force feed me tuna for anything, I don't even know if I'd be able to do it if we're being completely honest. But when we do talk to you in a year, I'd love to have you back on a year just to give us an update on what you've been up to. Where would you like to be at in a year? What are some goals you'd like to have achieved? Just in your overall life as well. Where would you like to be at in a year?
Definitely pro within a year, and after that, give myself 3 to 4 years to be on Olympia stage, and that's what it's going to be.
What's one area of your physique that you, when I ask you this next year, what's one area that you wish to have improved on the most? And we'll see if it actually adds up.
My ham glue tie.
Okay. See, that's another problem with being that tall, though. Too. That just almost sets you up for failure with the ham glute tie as well. So
I'm gonna do it, man.
yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, hey, I'm gonna hold you to it. I always, before I have a guest on for the second time, I always rewatch just a few parts of the first one just to make sure I don't ask the same questions, and second of all, to make sure that they get that answer right. And I will say it's about like 25% of the guests actually improve on that body part. So we'll see if you can help crack that percentage up, a little bit more. But if there was anything that any bit of advice you would give someone that's just looking to get in shape or just looking to get started, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give them?
Find something you like. And to me, like that's how I feel like I'm been able to be as successful as I am right now with bodybuilding because it is such a deep passion in me. Like it just is all of me. I love it, every aspect of it. And there's people who hate it. You have CrossFitters; they love it. Go get it, do it. You have runners. Go get your, go get your run on. Find something you're passionate about. Rock it out. Try to impact others in a great way. Pour love on people. Listen,
Honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. And lastly, I love talking about coaches on this podcast because so many people say that they're a coach, especially on social media. And, for every good coach, there's about 10 bad coaches. And I've always found that fascinating how people find that good coach because there's so much trial and error in this lifestyle, enough as it is. But in the coaching aspect, it's a whole different thing. But in your own experience, what makes a coach a good coach to you? Because it does vary from person to person.
um, I've been. I'm so thankful for my coach. Number one, Lance Moore, because he's like to me. Like I feel like number one, we're a great fit. Number two, like he literally, I see this in him that he's got a gift. Like he can touch me and say, "Hey, you're going to need half of a white potato, or you need a half of a sweet potato." Like how do you know? Like, and he's on spot every time. And to be able to be connected with someone like that and have my drive and my person.
Wait, so he can touch like a body part and he'll know like what you need to eat then? That's like a psychic power.
Yeah, I mean he's a blessing for sure. So yeah, and I can definitely tell the shows that he's able to go with me and be able to lay his hands on me and be able to look at me face to face as opposed to like FaceTime. There's a difference on stage. I see it every time. So to have him in my corner, and it's been, I'm so thankful for sure. But he's definitely, I mean, he pushes me. He's there for me when I don't have a person, right? So it's just me, and so like to be able to have my bad moments and him like love me through it. Like, okay, this is his famous words. First of all, breathe. Like, yes sir, yes sir. Like, and just love me through those bad moments where I just want to, because I'm exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically from work, and then I'm coming in here trying to drive out my dreams, and for him to just support me and love me through that. So I'm thankful.
Well, I might need to have him on because he's doing some witchcraft then if he's able to do all this stuff that you're talking about. So, but I mean, yeah, coaches are definitely the unsung heroes. A lot of the times, I mean, they can really be such a positive impact. But how important is it to you too? Like you said, you're a mom of four to set this example to your kids that like you can really accomplish anything. Because going through all the stuff that you've gone through in your story alone, that's inspiring enough as it is. But how important is it to also be setting that example that like, yeah, if you set your mind to something, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah, I mean that is the most important thing to me, just because, and this, I got on a soapbox the other night to somebody because, finances are hard when you're competing. And, to have 5 shows this year, being a single mom and doing it all myself, no sponsorships, that's heavy. That's a lot. And so there's way to make money. And this is what I told my kids too. I was like, you know what, there's ways to make money. People like throw out ideas of different things that you can do, and there's things presented to you, and you're like, you know what? That's against my morals, my character, of who I am. And I will not. I will not stand on that stage and get my pro card and be thinking in my head, man, I feared from myself. I will not do that. I will struggle. I will live in my car. I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I will persevere through the tough times, financial or whatever, to be able to hold my head up high and know that I'm setting a good example for my kids, my grandkids, and to be able to say, you know what, mom rocked that out. Mammy rocked that out. So, regardless of those hard times.
That is a great mindset to have because yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with the opportunities. Like it's it's tragic that that does happen for a lot of people to make money in this lifestyle, but I'm glad that you have the morals too because that's just such a great example to have and to follow. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. It was an absolute delight. And yeah, other than your coach, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Lance Moore, that's my coach, and then Edge Fitness, Hernando here in Hernando, Mississippi, and then my kids, Cody, Kayla, Brianna, Briley, and I have 3 grandkids, Kenna, Jada, Chase, and of course Achilles. So yeah.
Well, I guess it's gonna be hilarious when these kids one of these days are gonna be like, "Hey, here's a photo of my grandma," and then they'll show a photo of you, and then everyone's gonna be like, What the hell's
Yeah.
going on here?" So there's always I've always said the older guests are always my favorite to have on because they're by far the most inspirational, and it's just it's shocking in a good way too. But again, everyone, go and give Samatha a follow. I'll leave a link down to her Instagram page down below. Buyer beware, you will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. But again, Samantha, it was great to talk to you, and I can't wait to see how you do in your show. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.